live, not live, we're recording. Okay. Our first tabletop. I just thought of that right now. Tabletop podcast that we're obviously videoing, but I think we want to do this format is just kind of like topic discussion.
Absolutely. I like this setup a little bit more because we look like we're ready for a good debate. We look like we're ready for what's going on in the world and putting out a message of what people need to think of and emergency management.
Yeah, and I think we should. I like the first topic I picked was news related. So let's just jump into that because it it irks me to see government announcements like this. So I'm just going to put up here on the screen
Yeah.
the news release that came out from the Government of Canada, Public Safety Canada, on September 3rd. And I don't even, and it's regarding the establishment of the community, what do they call it here? The Canadian Centre for Recovery and Resilience. So, in response to recent disasters like Lytton wildfire, Hurricane Fiona at Northwest Territories in 2023, which I don't know why it's taken them this long to even get to a Center for Recovery and Resilience, given the history of disasters in Canada over the last 20 years, let alone 30 years. Why they're just focusing, anyway, that's another thing. But this center, which I'm going to put that up here just to show everyone kind of what the website looks like, Canadian Centre for Recovery and Resilience, is mainly sponsored by Canada, and the membership that's going to make up the Centre for Disaster Resilience and Recovery, which is mainly insurance. So just some history behind this. Insurance Bureau of Canada, I think they were involved in like helping to get the Impact Center going, which was kind of like they did some work on the flood resilience and stuff like that for municipalities. I don't think it spoke at all to First Nations or other Indigenous communities. Now the government is putting all its eggs in the baskets of municipalities and insurance companies, which irks me because obviously they're doing it because they see municipalities as a higher risk, I'm sure, because of economic drivers. But First Nations obviously are not a big market for insurance, right? Some nations are lucky to get insurance on their nation buildings. They're in the market. Maybe some homeowners and some reserves can get home insurance, maybe. But I just see a good step forward for Canada in emergency management by establishing this center, but financially, and it looks like in all components, it's going to nations because the insurance companies, what do they care? First Nations are not in their market.
Right. Because they're going to look at the big cities, right? They're going to look at, and for First Nations, like even we talked about getting insurance. I was able to get insurance back on Siksika Nation because we have full-time fire service. And the questions they ask, the only question they ask for the insurance company, how far is the fire hydrant from your house?
Right.
That's it. That's the
it.
response or anything like that. It's just,
Yep.
did you have a hydrant? Yeah. Okay. Qualify.
So, yeah. So, great. This center is going to come out probably with a ton of data, a ton of research, a ton of great ideas, but they're not going to be relevant to Indigenous.
No.
Right.
Like even, how do the First Nation communities engage with them? How do they just ask questions? What are they like? Because there's no,
won't be able to.
Exactly.
So, and that's the issue here, right? Because Indigenous Services Canada, who's responsible for Indigenous communities, mostly Indian Act bands, based on self-governing nations below the 60th parallel, and Crown Indigenous relations responsible for nations above the 60th parallel. What is the equivalent that they're doing for nations? There isn't one, as far as I know.
No, it's not.
The only thing I know ISK is actually actively doing in disaster recovery is they're making a First Nations disaster recovery plan template.
Which they keep changing
Which
every
it keeps
time
changing.
you submit a claim,
Yes,
and they say we're analyzing it
yes,
and we've made some changes. That's all they
Yes.
say.
Yep.
Never show what the changes are
right,
because they don't even know what the changes.
exactly.
Consistency is so horrible with the federal government when it comes to accountability and the promises that they make to First Nations or just in general to the public of we will help you, we will do this. And when you do start accessing it, then the barriers start coming up.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about that one quickly because it irks me to see all of this going into a center like this where the research and the data is highly unlikely going to be relevant to First Nation. So my big thing is again with ISK is what are you going to do in reciprocation of what Public Safety Canada is doing? Right?
Yeah.
That's always the big question. ISK is really behind public.
And see, here's the thing though, right? So that's a great question. So right now we're dealing with Indigenous Services Canada.
I asked.
What's that? Right now we're dealing with Indigenous Services Canada.
Yep.
That when it comes to anything emergency management for the province, BC, Alberta, where they say we don't have the capacity to do anything, so we're going to subcontract to an agency
Yeah.
to do it. So back to what you said, what are they going to do to mimic what public safety is doing and relate it to First Nations? They don't have the capacity. They don't have the capacity
Yeah.
to deliver funding or anything out to First Nations.
Yeah.
That way, what are they going to do with what public safety? And
which drives me crazy because I estimate Indigenous Services Canada's expenditure on response and recovery since probably 2022. I have to think it's over 1.5, maybe even getting closer to 7. Right? Like when you think of all of just alone, the Little Red River Cree Nation recovery, that is probably going to end at around 700 to 800 million, combined with all the other nation response from 2023, 24, and in Manitoba this year, especially.
Well, we had some 2025 nations were affected up north too.
And north, so all in, total costs of everything, to say that we need to invest only in municipal recovery and resilience at that scale of having a center for it, sponsored by the insurance company. Now, maybe the insurance industry came out and led that because it's in their best interest.
Absolutely.
And there's no entities like that right now that would do that for First Nations. Although I would argue that insurance companies should be more, but
absolutely,
yeah,
because so I look at it this way: insurance companies and then Indigenous Services funding capital funding agreements with the First Nations to to expand their nation or to infrastructure. They give all this funding, right? This reporting has to be done. The biggest question the First Nations have is, okay, thank you for all this equipment, right? I know we said specifically we need this equipment. However, you know what? We're going to need funding for a building to secure this equipment because it's just going to sit outside and wreck. Or we need to secure it in case of fire, in case of anything, right? Or insurance purposes. Indigenous Services says, look, you asked for the equipment. That's up to you now to make sure that stuff's covered. They don't come back. They don't come back and audit the nations. How's that equipment doing? You know, and see for themselves, like, you know, how it's being kept.
Yeah.
And then, so with that mentality coming from Indigenous Services Canada, what do you think the mentality is for the First Nations? Is, well, if they don't care, why should
do
I
we
care?
Yeah.
Um, and with insurance companies, if they were to engage with the First Nations, there'd be so much change that could happen, opportunities for the First Nations. One, insurance, if all nations come together, maybe in a region, all First Nation insurance can be a lot cheaper and more accessible because
Oh,
right
yeah.
now, this, I know, speak for
Even available.
exactly for my nation, my home insurance, because the house itself belongs to the nation.
Yeah.
They've given it to me to live in, and it'll be mine till whenever, right? However, if there was a fire that destroyed my home, I have to wait for them to build me another home. However, the only insurance that I'm allowed to get is contents,
Right.
which I get. It's, however, but there's so much more to that. Is, you know, just opportunities for them to insure more things. Which
Yeah.
means if you insure more things at a lower rate, at a lower like premium, then things are going to change in the nations. They'll be more. They'll be able to respond and go through the insurance company as opposed to Indigenous Services Canada, right?
Yeah.
I get one has to pay either or. However, again, exactly what you said. There's no discussions of that.
Yeah, but
of how they can benefit.
I also think the insurance companies just look at it and say there's no money to be made.
Absolutely.
That's at the end of the day what it comes down to.
And you're right. Because really, what the insurance companies, when they go to the First Nations, what are they dealing with? Very simple. Our capital assets,
projects.
that, or even just our buildings,
Yeah.
homes.
Yeah.
That's it.
Schools maybe.
No, not even that. Not even that's on. That's
Oh
a
yeah,
separate
that's true.
insurance.
The schools don't get insured.
Nope.
Insurance, no. True.
Separate funding things with schools.
Yeah.
Health services. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's all self-insurance. Okay, so that's that. I just wanted to bring it up as kind of like a current events type of thing that I kind of watch for because I'm curious about the development of a national center for recovery and resilience to see what comes out of it.
Mhm.
And again, I'm just, even for non-Indigenous communities, I'm disappointed that it's primarily being funded by the insurance industry because they're only really looking to look at how they can mitigate their losses and keep their premiums either the same or higher. Right?
Mhm.
They're not going to 10 years later after this center has done some research and issued some things and maybe some changes made and risk drops. My house insurance isn't go down. My neighbors won't. They'll be the same premium or higher. My risk will be lower. Insurance companies will make more. But I think that's all. Right? That's just what. Hey, what do you got? You must have something.
I just want to talk about kind of along the same lines of the difference between a municipality and First Nations. What drives me crazy in the fact of how much support a municipality gets for their emergency management and recognition and all that stuff. And for example, all these incident management teams that are across Alberta, we've got one, we've got Strathcona,
Yeah.
right? One in Medicine Hat, one in Calgary, Canada. Edmonton, up north, we got High Level, right? Why is it that? Because here's the thing, right? Indigenous Services Canada, we talked about, gives a provincial entity agency money to deliver emergency management courses, services, support in the First Nations communities, right? Why can't Indigenous Services Canada support the fact of, okay, you know what? Here's what the municipalities are doing. Maybe we should look at supporting them the same way as a municipality. So changing the script here, which will lead to different agreements. So if Digital Services Canada starts talking to the chiefs and they're saying, look, we want to make emergency management a standard practice on a First Nation. We want to make it mandatory. Here's why. When we start talking about capital projects, when we start talking about future investment, it's going to work in many ways. One, emergency management will support, like in our teachings online, is how to prepare to mitigate the vulnerabilities of housing in wildfires, in storms, businesses that are on the First Nations that give revenue to the nations, right? If they have the same concept and the same support as they do the municipalities, things would be different. Because here's the thing, is the province and the agencies that are all in the province that are already available for the First Nations, right? They're great. Like, I don't want to say anything bad about them because I know some of the individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're great response. However, there's no integrated training.
Yeah.
So it could start off as simple as this. So, and I'll put it in this way with how the municipalities are given grants now. Okay? Bear with me. So, no, you don't.
Okay.
Drumheller
Yeah.
wants to build a diking system
Yeah.
because it got flooded before. In their agreement of funding agreement, they have to reach out to the local First Nations community, engage with them, because Drumheller and a lot of towns are in Blackfoot traditional lands.
Okay.
Now, the reason why they did this, because there could be, Indigenous artifacts that are still there.
Yeah.
It could be a significant medicine or anything, any culturally that these sites could impact what the culture of the First Nations community. So they have to engage with the local First Nations, saying, "Look, we want you to be a part of it." And the reason why I know that is they talked to me when I was the director of emergency management for Siksika Nation. They came and said, "Hey, we're doing this diking. We want you to be part of the committee because it's in our agreement. We have to make sure that there's nothing, that we're going to be wrecking for your culture.
Right.
And plus, that too, we want to give back and make sure that the diking system is going to be. So if there's any artifacts, we're going to put up higher or do anything like that, right?"
Yeah.
So back to what I'm saying about support for the municipalities is, look, okay, sure, you're going to build a great incident management team. A big percentage of some of the major First Nations, I'm talking big tribes, are next to a municipality, town. Wetaskiwin, Anoka, Lethbridge, huge, right? The nations are right there.
Yeah.
Is if they're going to get a funding agreement, they need to have a certain amount of First Nations that are integrated into their incident management team.
Yeah.
That's a start.
Yeah, that's a good start.
Because what it is they can come to a municipality, you start getting training, get those tools, and then that builds a collaborative way of training together. Because now I did it, and I talked about with Fort Smith when I was up there helping a community.
Mhm.
I talked to the CAO because she was trying to find funding for emergency management. I said who I was. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I said, this is how we can work together. We have the First Nations here, they have funding opportunities for emergency management that they can access. Yeah. And you have some. However, you can't get everything you need, but the First Nations can. If we work together, train together, why can't we get money for a training course?
Sure, all together.
And we'll invite you over to train with us, and vice versa. So now when we actually respond, we all know how we work. we share, right?
Yeah, I think there's, I don't know. I think there's a lot of municipal will have, like, there's too much.
Absolutely.
Like, I think there's just too much of this. Like, it's like on the TikTok, right? Like watching our comments on our TikTok, some of our TikTok posts, like residential school deniers.
Sorry?
Residential school deniers, right? They'll deny, even though in 2003 bodies were found and they were either just too young or didn't remember.
They only think about like the Kamloops thing, right? Where, oh, there was potential graves, but there's no bodies found. Therefore, there's no.
Is this the lady that made that comment on TikTok? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, okay, there is her. Yeah, she's
which
nutball.
she's like, why are we?
She's
They found no
nutbar number
bodies. So what
7.
are they doing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the example is, even though there were bodies found in 2003, you send these people the news article, and they'll still find a way to deny it.
Yeah.
So, and these are the people that are living in non-Indigenous communities. So I do think, and I know this for a fact because when I worked for the government of Alberta in disaster recovery, we would reimburse municipalities that responded to grass fires that crossed off a reserve into their county.
Yeah.
We would provide funding. The municipality, of course, would try and go and recover some of their costs from the nation first. The nation wasn't getting money from anyone. So the municipality was thinking, well, they don't want to pay us. And the nation's like, well, we don't have any money. Where are we going to get it from?
Mm-hmm.
So then the municipality goes and complains to the government and then blames the nations for not wanting to work. And it's because they don't understand the nation context.
Yes.
Or the governance and the community and everything about it. So I think, one, there's a lot of old school municipal people that think I had a shitty experience with the nation once. I'm going to have a shitty experience with them anytime, so why bother? Racism. There's not even a willingness to want to, they're probably getting end of career, so why bother? My pension is safe. I just need to hide out for another 5 years. Like all of that, right? And I think you're right. ISK should be taking a leadership role, creating the environment for the development of these collaborations, right? In some way, because I really just don't think that there's all the chiefs that ISK are consulting with are kind of saying, yeah, we want to work in a silo. Like we don't want to, but I mean to, like, don't get me wrong, at least, like there are First Nations that have mutual aid agreements with municipalities, right? Especially for fire service. I don't know how prevalent that is, but I think it does exist. It can be done.
This exists. Floyd, my mentor that helped me all through emergency management. He's a great example for a great mutual aid between Piikani Nation and Ranger Creek.
Yeah.
To the point where when a wildfire was threatening the municipality around Pinch Creek, they wanted to send their fire service. They actually requested Floyd and their fire service come cover the town.
Right.
Now that's trust. That's an agreement. We need
Yeah.
more of those.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just looking at emergency management training, public safety Canada. Sorry, I don't mean to be distracted.
That's okay.
Public Safety Canada continues to provide leadership and emergency management training. Following the closure of Canadian Emergency Management College in 2012, through a new learning partnership with the Canada School of Public Service, federal employees will be able to access emergency management courses through a functional learning community. To support learning across the broader emergency management community, the department is working with the Canada School of Public Service to explore ways to expanding access to training. In Canada, emergency management training is available through provincial, territorial, and municipal governments, as well as through community colleges, universities, and private sector organizations. Public safety is engaging the various stakeholders stakeholder groups to promote common approaches to emergency management, including the adoption of standards and best practices. Where in there is an offer to include First Nations? Like,
I was just having to look up what I kind of assumed what functional learning was.
Yeah.
But it's an educational approach that prioritizes teaching practical, real world skills to individuals so they can navigate daily life effectively. So they're just teaching functional, practical skills some way that people can apply it really.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Again, it goes back to what I said before, though.
They're training who? Public service employees?
It says across the broader management community, departments is working with training available through provincial, territorial, municipal governments, as well as colleges, universities, private sector organizations.
And this is through
Public safety, emergency
public-
management training.
okay.
This is going through what they're starting now,
They're starting now.
and giving funding to is the Canada School of Public Service. So again, Canada School of Public Service. That is a federally funded school.
Yeah.
Which, what I'm trying to say now is there's no barriers to this being a provincial school. It's a federal school, which means
Yeah.
what? Federal land, which is First Nations. Why can't they access,
Yeah.
right? I know it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they're trying to include it in this territorial, provincial, however.
But maybe they can access it. Let's just assume they can access it. But
Yeah.
even if they can, it's still not going to be culturally relevant.
No.
Those-
It's going to be more tailored to, like it says, municipality governments.
Yeah. Colonial emergency
Yeah.
management.
And
Yes.
their, if you want to call it their foundation, their Bible, is on the Emergency Management Act. And if that's what they're basing it from, training as set out in the Emergency Management Act through the Canadian Emergency Management College.
I just don't this is me at the heart of it. I just don't understand why people either in the federal government, provincial, territorial, any non-Indigenous person that's been living in Canada for at least. I mean, there are some that think like this, but majority do not. The government certainly doesn't as a system. What is so hard about understanding that if we were to become more, I don't know if symbiotic is the right word, but more partnered, more relation to First Nations, we would be avoiding so much risk in terms of unable to access resources, having to sort of reduce the overall cost of response and recovery with First Nations, the housing crisis, addictions, cost of health. It's costing us more to try and continue to colonize and wipe out nations than working together and truly becoming two symbiotic nations.
Absolutely.
But it's that system is so, that blows my mind. But that's the colonial system.
I do, and I rack it up to is taking away the resilience and taking away what the chiefs and councils and everything always fight for is their rights as First Nations to have access to being better, a better community, to be as equal as a municipality in terms of any access. And I get tired of hearing you talk about that, earlier talk about, some people, there's the racism and everything like that. I get so tired of hearing there's my taxpayers' dollars going to waste for that First Nations. Why are my
Yeah.
taxes paying for whatever services come up on the,
Yeah.
right?
But that's the thing. That's what I mean. If you gave people the facts on that
Yeah,
and sat down with them across the table and pointed out line by line, they still wouldn't accept it.
exactly. And I mean, yeah, they wouldn't get it. I look at it always this way. I always, when I talk to communities and I talk to about communication, right? I think 80%, I'll give anyone, off nation, 80% will kind of get it and go, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Thanks for the information. I got to absorb that a little bit. Maybe I need to look into it a little more.
Yeah.
However, it satisfies their appetite a little bit more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The people we're talking about is a 20%. It
80,
doesn't
20
matter.
rule. Yeah.
We could have a document signed
By
in the
the king.
1800s that's been updated every century or whatever.
Queen's signed document.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
still would not be enough because they
Yeah.
have this mentality of my tax dollars go into the federal government and they are distributing money to all of Canada. And the only time they ever include First Nations is when they're complaining about that, right?
Yeah.
We just finished talking about they put as much money into the First Nations to build that symbiotic relationship. Well, look at the emergency management. They say for every dollar of preparedness, save $6, $7.
8, 9, 10. Who knows?
That's right.
It's different with every event. Like, look at Little Red River Cree Nation. Twice
Wow,
the government of Canada,
the juice.
Pellegrino. You're getting bougie. Twice the government of Canada denied funding for a $300,000 fire break. That was Fire Smart, not approved, but the fire smarting assessments determined this fire break is needed here for a cost of 300 grand. Canada denied it, their application for that funding twice. They had a wildfire, and it caused a $200 million response, maybe $500, $700, $800 or $600 million recovery when they could have. But you know why they denied it? Because the ministry that runs it, which is I think still under Climate Adaptation Canada or certain, I don't know who, I can't remember, but we talked to them. I talked to the program deputy.
Mm-hmm.
The economic value of Little Red was not significant enough to warrant the investment. So they redirect the money to communities that are more economically viable. Right? That's how the funding gets dispersed under that program, at least as far as 2023 and pre that. So when we looked at the disbursement of funds from that program, the north, like I'm talking like north of Edmonton,
Yeah.
even maybe a little bit more, were significantly underfunded because they're not considered economic drivers. Therefore, the money should go to communities that provide more economic output. Like, to me, that's kind of like, that's just, I mean,
What-
I understand we gotta protect the economy, fine, great, but really,
Here's the thing. What are their terms of reference for economic development? How do they compare a municipality to a frickin' First
Yeah,
Nations?
exactly.
Like we look at some of the First Nations. There is economic development
yeah,
that's focused on that community. In other words, they're their own city.
yeah,
Their economic development is way different than a municipality.
well, I've seen leakage studies that show like 90% of federal funding that go into a First Nation goes out to the surrounding county and non-Indigenous communities.
Absolutely.
Like, so I know this too because a university did a study on this about the recovery money that the feds put into
a nation that had a big wildfire. Like over 80% the money from that recovery went to contractors, developers, resources outside of the community.
Which is revenue right into their
Yeah.
into the hands.
That's including people that made overtime and got new jobs, their paychecks,
Yeah.
all the burned down homes, all 100, which I think we averaged about $50,000 of contents per home. All those contents purchased outside of the community.
Right. So we are not included in any economic studies or comparisons. However, this is what also upsets me is that, however, when it comes to their stats, First Nations stats are in their stats to justify.
Oh,
And what I mean by that is,
Okay.
let's look at the fentanyl epidemic. It's
Yeah.
still ongoing for
Yeah.
Lethbridge.
Yeah.
Talking to my good friend Jason, when he told me he found out that because a big portion of the nation that's next to Lethbridge live in Lethbridge or they're being transported there,
Yeah.
they took all of of that nation's statistics and included them
Oh, sure.
into their, hey, you know what, we got a big fentanyl epidemic here.
Yeah.
We need more money, and they included stats. However, don't give nothing to the First Nations to say thank you for letting us utilize your stats to your nation. Not even an offer of, hey, you know what, we want to make a donation to your addiction center. We
Yeah.
want to offer whatever. Like it's horrible. Like and it's no wonder that we just talked about one side, municipalities going, they're racist. Well, we're in the same way. We're thinking, why the heck would I want to help them?
Exactly.
They're mean to me, I'm mean to them.
Yeah.
Ongoing feud. And
It's
the
an
government
ongoing
just
feud.
sits there and goes,
Well, that's what they want, though.
yeah, exact control.
They want that ongoing feud so they can continue to distract people from what they're actually doing,
Absolutely.
which is not a lot, maintaining the status quo, or making it work.
I'd be
Right.
curious. Maybe you're a quicker typer than I am. What is the population of Lethbridge, roughly, do you think? Maybe 20,000?
No more.
80,000.
Less than that. I haven't looked yet. I'm gonna go 57,642.
I'm going to say 100,000.
I don't know. Okay, it's bigger than Red Deer. Ooh, 111,400 as of 2024. Oh, but with nearby populations,
Yeah.
139,000. It just says census metropolitan area, which I don't know what that's defined as.
Blood Tribe is one of the largest tribes in
Yeah, 111,000.
Canada, right next to Lethbridge. And those stats that you're talking about, the first, what should be recognized is the amount of money that's being spent from the First Nations, not only the Department of Business, but just the community members feeding Lethbridge. If they were to stop at any point, I don't care what they say, they would feel it a little bit and going, ooh, why have our sales kind of slowed down a little bit, right? Is it going to make a huge impact where they're going to start closing stores? I don't know. It's the fact that the First Nations do make an impact in all communities. We had the same discussion with Strathmore and Siksika Nation. You have town people that are complaining about same thing, some of the funding, some of the stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
I said, if Siksika Nation decided not to, you have 6,000 people. I think Strathmore's got 30,000, I think. 6,000 people just stopped going to Strathmore. Business, and we're talking about everything right across the board. For our building materials, for our fuel, for anything. What is the effect on their economy?
Oh, exactly. Huge. And that's why I always told, like, the one community I worked in
like the government was really slow at refunding evacuation costs. And it was causing a lot of issues within the local municipality who had all the hotels because the hotel owners weren't getting paid fast enough and they were taking on a lot. And the hotel owners started threatening to lock evacuees out. They weren't getting paid. And so this actually happened, like the hotel owners. This is a thing I don't like about First Nations, is how they just let people walk into their band offices. Like the hotel owners walked right into the band office to like a financial clerk and started grilling her about all of it. And what is this young, middle-aged First Nations woman going to do who's just entering in receipts? And you've got some white dude rocking in from the city, basically looking down at you. What the hell is that in the first place? Second, they came and got me because I was in the conference room and they said, Brad, you got to come and deal with this, right? So I just told the hotel owners, I said, okay, lock everyone out. We'll start letting the group lodging know that we're going to receive another 600 people, and you can go back to your regular occupancy. Oh, no, we're here to talk about, we're here to get payment and discuss an arrangement. I said, no.
That's not what you said.
I said, no, it's okay. We will just move everyone. We've got extra camps. It's still nice out. We can build some more tent frames, whatever. So my point with the staff and the team was, I think a lot of the times, or at least in a couple of instances that I've been privy to, the First Nations feel like they don't have any power.
Yeah.
And they need the external communities. But in reality, those communities need them.
Absolutely.
And when you start to kind of press upon those external communities that you're now going to cut off your economic power,
Yeah.
they start to get worried.
Yeah.
Because they know that you're feeding their families. So yeah, this hotel owner was more than willing to negotiate new payment terms when we said we would pull out like 100 rooms worth of people that he was expected to have there for another year of evacuation.
Yeah.
Right?
Guaranteed money. I know it
Guaranteed.
might be a little bit late. However, the agreements are there. The government knows.
Yeah.
I get it. The system is flawed in terms of quick turnover.
Yep.
However, the agreement is there. It's in
Yeah.
writing. It's there. You're going to get your money.
Get your money. And nobody should be able to expect a First Nation that has, pre-disaster 5 or 6 staff scale up to manage an influx of $200 million over the next 9 months and the 15,000 receipts that go with it and invoices. Like nobody's going to ramp up that quickly. But that's the problem with ISK's process is they expect the First Nations to have that operational output.
Yeah.
Right? Like it took solid 2 years to work with ISK to get all funding, invoices, documentation, and receipts to them in a way that they could visibly audit and see that the money spent to date was justified, the 200 and some million. That wasn't only on the nation. ISK also did not increase their workforce to deal with the influx of paperwork.
Yeah.
And they don't have internal systems to deal with that. They have Excel and Word and an email. That's all they've got. Like it's completely embarrassing.
And to hear feedback on what you're talking about from Indigenous Services Canada when they say, "Oh no, we're working with the nations." I get that. I get they can say that because I guess technically they are. What that means is
Yeah, technically they're at
they're
the table.
just talking to each other. That's
Yeah,
it. So
that's it.
that's So they've got to lay out more of the terms of how they're engaging,
Yeah.
specifically what they're engaging with, and even come up with, well, we recognize what we just talked about,
Yeah.
that the First Nations already, again, back to funding agreements, which are back in the 80s, some of the nations, they're
Mhm.
fixed.
Yep.
And with the growing community, what people don't know is that the funding agreements don't grow with the community.
Yep. It's
That's
the
it,
same.
right? And so what I'm trying to say is that for Indigenous Services Canada, more specific EMAP, saying they're working with the First Nations, they should say, look, I want to give you a heads up, and here's how we can support you. You will be dealing with a lot of financial paperwork that's going to be very heavy and could affect your business continuity going forward,
Mhm.
because the staff that you have is geared to running the finances of the
Yep.
nation right now.
Exactly.
There's no big corporation that's got different financial departments of dealing with insurance claims, the staff and everything. They're staffed.
Yep.
First Nations don't have that.
Exactly.
And so, but they don't, however, they don't mention, oh no, within EMAP, you can hire whoever you want. And even with the previous agency they work with, oh, you can hire whoever you want. Call your cousin.
Yeah.
Call whoever. I know we should be for nations. My goodness, I get that. I
Yeah.
get the promotion of helping the First Nations. However, the response should be, hey, you know what? You're going to need some financial help. You talk to your stakeholders, your partners that you deal with financially. Every First Nation deals with 2 or 3 banks because of the amount of money going in and out, right? They should be able to say, once you talk to your stakeholders, see what you can find, and we'll make some recommendations.
Yep.
And show them how to set up a financial emergency management EMAP task force.
Yep.
Like, boom, I'm just thinking about another teaching point. Why not teach the First Nations? Here's how you set up a financial task force.
Well, we set up a recovery task force
Which,
for the one.
yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is take that,
Yeah.
what we're talking about even with the TikTok.
Yep.
How can we work together? You've got, Brad, you worked so hard to put that team together, right? Take that team, talk to the First Nations, say, look, one, there's money that they can make because
Yep.
EMAP will pay that team to now go over and help another community.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is just get them ahead to a point where they can take a few of their employees from the First Nation that can now say, well, most of the work's done. It's now lipstick and mascara.
Yep.
They're just putting together documents and sending them.
Yep.
Which isn't going to impede on their day-to-day business continuity.
Yep.
It's that thinking that Indigenous Services Canada has got to step up to the plate and say, look, here's the funding, here's what we're going to do. I'll use this example, and it blew my mind when they told me this. Being back home in Siksika Nation, when I'm talking about funding here, I'm talking about how funding was delivered. So COVID, I get the concept. COVID came for some. We didn't know. Nobody knew what the heck this was, how to respond. It was like apocalyptic proportions of we're all going to die now, right?
Yeah.
I get that concept. I really do. I've always trained my communities and everything like that, even with the capital funding that I've got for my departments and other areas. They ask for a financial report. So they know they just get a report and they can justify, here, no, we gave this money, here's where it is. For me and my team to engage with them and say, okay, we're gonna need money for the response. IC Canada, or Indigenous Services Canada, comes back with their COVID thing, gave the nation $1.5 million. And I said, okay, all right, we're gonna count for every penny of it. Well, don't worry, I said, my team's dialed in, I've already got experience doing this.
Yeah.
You know the response I got? And I quote, it doesn't matter what you do with the money as long as it's related to COVID.
It's yeah. That like if I had $1 for every time I heard an EMAP policy person say, here's what's EMAP eligible.
Yep.
And when the nation presents the case for the expenditure and it's presented, the typical response from the government is, okay, thanks, we'll take that back and look at it. But you told us this initiative fits under the policy. Well, yeah, but we still need to take it back and take a look at it. If I had $1 for every time that was said on our biweekly calls for 18 months, I'd probably have $45. Maybe $60 because we would sometimes pitch 2 or 3 initiatives per call. Every single time that was their response, which then I found out later that INAC used, when it was INAC, it was called I Need Another Copy.
Yeah.
So then they take it back, they forget about it, it gets lost in their bureaucracy. Then it's up to the nation to remind them, hey, you guys said you were going to discuss this internally over the last 2 weeks.
Yep.
What's the result? Oh, well, I'll have to go back and check with the team. They're not on the call. Like, it's actually borderline, it's incompetent.
It is.
And no accountability.
None. And even if there was accountability, it's the way they set up the system. Well, you know what? I'm not going to do more than I have to. You told me as a government employee, you told me I have to do this, send it to you. All right, I did my thing, send it to you. That's your problem now. And and if that person's not doing any work, then they sit and go, well, why do I get to do any work?
Right.
And not looking at going, man, this is the First Nations that's depending on this. Like this is what we do.
Yeah.
Like that's what, like First Nations monies is being regulated by Indigenous Service Canada.
Incompetent people.
We are paying for their department.
Yeah.
Because of the agreements.
Yep.
We have to beg for our money.
So
anyway, we wouldn't even get into that. That's a different discussion.
But so for me, okay, I see that as the problem. So then my thinking becomes, how do we support First Nations within that system so they can get the best possible outcome, maximum grant, get their money back, knowing that that's what's happening on the government end, right? It's a lot of project management, a lot of documentation, it's a lot of meeting minutes, it's a lot of stressful back and forth, it's a lot of dealing with the government coming back and saying, oh, we didn't get to it, oh, so-and-so was sick that week, like, oh, this is coming down from cabinet. If you're not prepared to deal with all of that frustration, burn out real quick.
Right.
And that's where I think, for First Nations, and I know First Nations are totally used to that environment.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that the majority of people who on a First Nation who worked in that system for a lot of their career are just burnt right out.
They are.
They can't even. They don't even care.
Yeah.
It's just what can I do to get through the first hour of work, the next hour.
And
right.
with that attitude comes with any future response where now it's, from my experience where I see supporting other directors is like, okay, we're going to do this response. It's look at you show the chief of council. It says right here, what we're discussing is covered under this system.
Yeah.
Like here's the agreement. Like here's legislation. Like here.
Yeah.
And council and management will go, oh no, we can't trust that.
Yeah.
They're not going to honor that.
Exactly.
And they literally say, we're not putting money towards this response because they know they can't trust the government and what they say on paper.
Yeah.
What they say that they promise. It's literally on a freaking document that states, you will be okay if you respond within these parameters.
Yeah.
This is covered, that's covered, that's covered.
Well, they're not, because EMAP never gives a nation approval for things.
Yeah.
they get approval in principle. So yeah, go spend that $100 million. Under principle, it should be eligible, but we're not going to tell you for sure until the end of the recovery and after we potentially do an audit,
Yeah.
right? That is the craziest thing.
Yeah.
Is everything that ISK gives through EMAP and a recovery and a response is approval in principle.
Yeah.
Like that's more risk than I would be. Like that's a lot of risk on a community, especially when the community is trying to, especially when the government on one side of their mouth is saying, oh, truth and reconciliation, culturally appropriate, indigenous led.
Mm-hmm.
And when a nation does those things, and then ISK says, well, it's approved in principle, but we won't really know until we audit. Like what? Like that's double speak, right? That's authoritarian 1984 shit.
Absolutely. And how do you expect
To write 1984 emergency.
how does a nation expect to make themselves better when, or sorry, make it train and do all this stuff and follow the rules that Indigenous Services Canada gives you in terms of EMAP and the response when they don't fulfill any of their obligations? And say this in principle stuff, because again, I want to reiterate again, all these nations has fixed agreements, like they're given money every year to run their nation.
Yeah.
Under an agreement that was made back in the 80s, the 70s, you name it, right? So for an example, Siksika Nation, Blood Tribe, two big reserves, right? The original agreement, and I'll just use it as an example because I don't know the accurate numbers, but I'll still put it like this. The Public Works, in their original agreement at the time,
Yeah.
they had 500 roads. So in the agreement, here's what we're going to give you to maintain 500 roads.
Yeah.
That's it. Siksika Nation, with technology and expansion of the community, more housing, more trying to do some economic development, they got to build more infrastructure, more roads. So now that 500 roads they had at the agreement, they now have 1,000 roads. But you know what? Guess how much money they're given every year for those roads?
Oh, nothing new.
They're given enough money to do 500 roads, but they still have they have 1,000.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening, I see back home, I see everywhere else, is they are constantly chasing their tail. So they're like, look, we want to maintain all the roads. Well, we can't. So that funding is basically just doing patchwork.
Yeah.
They're never, ever, very rarely, there are still capital projects they can't apply for. However, for the most part, they're not. I guarantee all First Nations want to do what any municipality or any engineering company says to do and do a proper road.
Yeah.
Right? Or get the equipment packers.
They just want the proper road.
That's right.
That's it. That's all they're asking for. So, I mean, this all turns into emergency management because it's like in your risk assessment teachings, that all speaks to the lack of, or the vulnerability and the lack of being able to respond appropriately, or in some circles it's called lack of coping, right? It's if you have really shitty roads, law enforcement, ambulance, firefighters, good luck. You've got really shitty roads, good luck evacuees getting out safely. Like if you go up north where it's all gravel, and on those roads, you've got 100 people on those roads at once in a dry day with the dust. There's no visibility, right? That all feeds into vulnerability. And it's just so vulnerable. As a colonization, I think that's, I don't
Absolutely.
know. That's been an hour, I don't know.
It's been an hour? You've been talking and babbling for that long? All right, Gandalf, what do you think? We'll call it a date.
We'll call it a day and come back.
We'll come back and we'll talk about some other stuff.
Thank you.
Good night.